What if I told you that the most powerful move you will ever make against a narcissist isn't fighting, isn't explaining, isn't getting closure, and isn't even saying goodbye, but simply going silent? And the moment you stop contacting them, the moment you disappear without drama, without one last message, without begging to be understood, something happens behind the scenes that they never prepared for. Something that shakes their control, unsettles their confidence, and quietly hands the power back to you. And by the end of this, you're going to realize that the silence you thought would hurt you is actually the very thing that sets you free. When contact first stops between you and a narcissist, most people imagine that the narcissist immediately feels heartbroken or desperate. But that is not how their psychology works at all, because their emotional system is not built around attachment the way yours is. It is built around control, access, and predictability. So the first reaction they experience is not pain, but confusion. They are used to a certain rhythm where you respond, explain, argue, defend, or reach out. And even if the relationship was toxic, there was still a steady stream of emotional feedback that reassured them they mattered and that they could still influence you. So when you suddenly go silent, their brain does not interpret it as loss right away. It interprets it as a glitch in the pattern. At first, they assume there must be a simple explanation. Maybe you are busy, maybe you are trying to cool off, maybe you are waiting for them to make the first move. And this assumption keeps them calm because they still believe the connection is intact and accessible. In their mind, you are not gone. You are just temporarily delayed, like a tap that has been turned off but can be turned back on at any moment, which is why they often act surprisingly relaxed or indifferent in the beginning. This is where many people feel hurt, because they expect the narcissist to chase immediately. And when that doesn't happen, they think, maybe I never mattered. But what is really happening is that the narcissist has not yet registered the silence as permanent. Confusion sits in first, not grief, because narcissists rely heavily on past evidence, and the past evidence tells them that you always come back, you always reply, you always break first. So their ego protects them by assuming this time will be no different. Only when the silence stretches longer than expected does that confusion start to morph into unease, because now the familiar script is breaking, and without a script they feel disoriented, like a performer who walked onto a stage and forgot their lines, checking their phone more often, replaying old interactions in their head, trying to figure out why their usual pull over you isn't working anymore, sensing something is off but not yet admitting to themselves that they might actually be losing access to you. When silence removes your presence from a narcissist's life, what disappears is not just communication, but their primary source of emotional supply. And this is where the experience begins to feel less like a breakup and more like psychological withdrawal. A narcissist depends on external reactions the way some people depend on caffeine or sugar, not for pleasure alone, but for basic functioning. Because your attention, your validation, your anger, your tears, even your attempts to reason with them all serve as proof that they still matter and still have influence. And that sense of influence regulates their fragile self-esteem. Without it, they do not feel grounded or secure inside themselves, because they never built an internal source of stability, so they borrow it from other people. When you stop contacting them completely, you unknowingly cut off that borrowed stability, and their nervous system begins reacting the same way a body reacts when a familiar substance is suddenly removed. At first, there is restlessness, a subtle agitation they cannot quite name, an urge to check their phone, scroll through your social media, or create some small excuse to reestablish contact. Not because they miss you in a healthy, loving way, but because something feels off and they want relief. Then comes irritability, where little things start bothering them more than usual. Their patience shortens, their mood swings increase, and they may lash out at others or look for new sources of attention to fill the gap, because their system is scrambling to replace what you used to provide. They might start texting old partners, flirting more aggressively, or suddenly becoming overly charming with strangers, all in an attempt to get quick emotional hits that temporarily soothe the discomfort. But those hits rarely last, because what they are really craving is the specific control they had over you, the predictability of knowing exactly how to trigger you and extract a reaction. That loss creates anxiety beneath the surface, a quiet panic that they cannot easily admit to themselves. So instead of recognizing it as dependence, they rationalize it as boredom or curiosity or pride. Meanwhile, the longer the silence continues, the more their thoughts circle back to you, not romantically, but obsessively. Because withdrawal keeps the brain fixated on the missing supply, replaying memories, imagining scenarios, wondering how to break the silence, all driven by a deep discomfort that grows stronger the longer they are left without access to your energy. When you stop chasing a narcissist, something far more destabilizing happens than simple distance, because what truly collapses is their sense of control, and control is the very foundation of how they experience relationships. To a narcissist, connection is not built on mutual respect or emotional intimacy. It is built on leverage, on knowing they can pull you closer or push you away, and you will still orbit around them, still explain yourself, still try to win their approval. And as long as you keep chasing, even subtly, they feel powerful, anchored, superior. Every time you send a long message trying to clear up a misunderstanding, every time you ask for closure, every time you show up hoping to fix things, you are unknowingly confirming to them that they still occupy space in your mind. And that confirmation feeds their belief that they can dictate the emotional temperature of the relationship. They come to expect your pursuit as a guarantee, like gravity, something that will always pull you back no matter how poorly they treat you. So when you suddenly stop chasing, when you no longer defend yourself, no longer argue, no longer ask why, and no longer try to reconnect, the dynamic they relied on quietly disintegrates. At first, they may interpret it as a temporary pause, assuming you will return like you always have, but as time passes and you remain still, the illusion of control begins to fracture, and that fracture creates deep psychological discomfort. Without your pursuit, they have no evidence that they still matter to you, and without that evidence, their inflated self-image starts wobbling. They may replay past interactions, wondering what changed, searching for the moment they lost their grip, because for someone who defines themselves through dominance, losing influence feels like losing identity. This is why they often escalate tactics, sending casual texts, creating drama, or staging coincidences to see if you will react, because any response reassures them that the strings are still attached. But when you remain unmoved, when you refuse to chase, the power quietly shifts for the first time, and they are left standing in unfamiliar territory where manipulation doesn't work. Certainty disappears, and the person they assumed would always run after them simply walks away, leaving them face to face with a reality they cannot control. After the silence stretches longer than they expected and their usual sense of control starts slipping away, many narcissists move into a new phase that is far less obvious but far more strategic. And this is where indirect tactics begin to appear, not bold declarations or heartfelt apologies, but subtle maneuvers designed to test whether they still have access to you. They rarely come straight out and say they miss you, because that would require vulnerability and accountability, two things that threaten their ego. So instead, they operate sideways, using what looks like coincidence, curiosity, or concern as a cover. You might suddenly notice they are watching all your social media stories within minutes, liking old photos or posting cryptic messages clearly aimed at provoking a reaction. And none of this is random. It is surveillance mixed with bait. They are trying to measure whether you are still emotionally hooked, whether you will view their profile back, whether you will text to ask what that strange post meant, because any small response tells them the cord between you is not fully cut. Sometimes they recruit mutual friends, asking about you casually as if they are just being polite, when in reality they are gathering information, wanting to know if you are dating, if you seem happy, if you mentioned them, because knowledge equals leverage in their mind. Other times they attempt what feels like an innocent check-in, a short message like, "Hey, hope you're okay," or "Found this thing that reminded me of you," crafted to look harmless while carrying a hidden hook, because if you reply, even politely, the door cracks open and they can slowly step back inside. If those gentle methods fail, the tactics may intensify into guilt or drama, such as pretending they are sick, in crisis, or suddenly nostalgic, manufacturing emotional urgency so you feel compelled to respond out of empathy. All of these behaviors serve the same purpose, which is not reconnection, but reassurance. Reassurance that they can still reach you, still move you, still exist in your mental space. What makes these tactics so effective is their ambiguity, because they are just subtle enough to make you question yourself, to wonder if you are overreacting or being cold. And that self-doubt is exactly what they rely on, since confusion weakens boundaries and increases the chances that you will break the silence first, giving them the proof they have been chasing that their influence over you never truly disappeared. While the narcissist is busy reacting to the loss of control and scrambling to regain access, something much quieter and far more profound begins happening inside you, something most people don't even recognize at first, and that is the gradual healing of your nervous system. When you are entangled with a narcissist, your body is almost never at rest, even if nothing dramatic seems to be happening on the surface, because you are constantly anticipating the next shift in their mood, the next criticism, the next cold withdrawal, or the next emotional explosion. Your brain learns to stay on high alert, scanning for subtle cues like changes in their tone, their facial expressions, or the timing of their replies. And this state of hypervigilance keeps your stress response switched on day and night. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline become your baseline, which is why you might have felt exhausted but unable to sleep deeply, tense for no clear reason, or mentally foggy and forgetful, as if your body never truly powered down. The moment contact stops and the chaos disappears, your system finally receives a signal it hasn't had in a long time. The signal that you are safe. At first it can feel strange or even uncomfortable, because calm might feel unfamiliar, like sitting in a quiet room after living beside a highway, and you may still reach for your phone out of habit, expecting drama that never arrives. But slowly, your breathing deepens, your shoulders relax, and your thoughts stop racing as much, and you begin sleeping through the night without replaying arguments in your head. You start noticing small things again, enjoying music, focusing better at work, laughing more naturally, because your brain now has energy available for living instead of surviving. Your emotions also stabilize, no longer swinging between hope and disappointment, because you are no longer being psychologically jerked back and forth by unpredictable behavior. Even your self-esteem begins to repair itself, since you are not constantly being criticized, gaslit, or made to feel inadequate. And without those repeated emotional wounds, your mind starts rebuilding a steadier sense of who you are. This healing is not dramatic or loud. It is subtle and biological, like a body recovering after a long illness, strength returning cell by cell, until one day you realize the anxiety that once felt permanent has softened into something lighter, something steadier, something that feels like peace. The most surprising part of all is not what happens to the narcissist during this silence, but what happens to you. Because while they are busy spiraling, strategizing, and trying to regain control, you are quietly becoming stronger in ways you never expected. And that strength doesn't arrive like a loud breakthrough or a dramatic moment of clarity. It builds slowly and almost invisibly, like sunlight creeping into a dark room. At first, you simply notice small changes. Maybe you don't check your phone as often. Maybe you don't feel that tight knot in your stomach when their name crosses your mind. Maybe a whole afternoon passes where you don't think about them at all, and those tiny gaps of freedom begin stitching together into something bigger. The emotional fog that once clouded your judgment starts lifting, and situations you used to rationalize suddenly look obvious, almost absurd, like waking up from a dream and realizing how distorted everything was. You begin seeing the manipulation for what it was, the excuses you made for them, the ways you shrank yourself to keep the peace. And instead of feeling shame, you start feeling clarity. With that clarity comes self-trust, because you realize your instincts were right all along. You were just trained to doubt them. Your confidence rebuilds piece by piece, not from their validation, but from your own choices, from keeping boundaries, from choosing silence, from proving to yourself that you can survive without their approval. Things that once felt terrifying, like being alone or starting over, begin to feel spacious and calm, and you start investing energy back into your life, reconnecting with friends, focusing on work, rediscovering hobbies, laughing more freely, making plans that don't revolve around managing someone else's moods. The version of you that existed before the chaos slowly returns, but wiser, stronger, less naive. And with every passing day, the emotional grip they once had weakens until their memory carries less charge, less urgency, less power over your nervous system. Then comes the moment that truly shocks most people. The moment you realize you don't actually want them back. Not because you hate them, not because you're pretending to be strong, but because you genuinely feel better without them, lighter, steadier, more like yourself, and that quiet indifference replaces the old longing, turning what once felt like an unbearable loss into something that simply no longer fits in your life. So here is the truth most people never see coming. The silence you feared would break you is the very thing that rebuilds you. Because when you and the narcissist both stop contacting each other, it doesn't create a void. It creates a separation of realities, where they are left scrambling for control while you slowly reclaim your peace. What looked like abandonment turns out to be protection. What felt like loss turns out to be release. And what seemed like the end of love becomes the beginning of clarity. While they measure their worth by who they can still influence, you begin measuring your worth by how calm, steady, and self-respecting you feel. And that shift changes everything, because real power is not making someone chase you. Real power is no longer needing to chase or be chased at all. The games stop working, the hooks stop catching, the emotional chaos loses its grip, and for the first time you see the relationship without illusion, not as something magical you lost, but as something heavy you finally put down. And that is the part that truly shocks people, because you expect the narcissist to suffer the most, yet the real transformation happens inside you. Your mind clears, your body relaxes, your confidence returns, and you discover a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and far less tolerant of disrespect. By the time they try to circle back, testing the waters, hoping you will respond like you used to, you are no longer standing where they left you. You have moved forward emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and their presence no longer feels irresistible, it feels irrelevant. That is the final lesson hidden inside no contact. That silence is not punishment, it is liberation, not a tactic to get them back, but a doorway to getting yourself back. And once you step fully into that freedom, you realize you were never losing them at all. You were finally losing what was slowly losing you.